I said, how the heck am I going to sell a product I don't even know how to build?
That's accurate. Yeah. That's highly accurate right there. So after they didn't train you essentially, and they just kind of threw you to the wolves, like what did you do to educate yourself? Did you watch YouTube, or did you just partner up with someone? Like, how did you train yourself?
I failed.
You failed. Tell us about that.
I failed until I got it right, because they weren't doing anything. It got to the point where I had to go to my general manager in tears. I was about to walk out the door with how I was getting treated. This was, I started in February. This was probably around like the August time period.
Okay, so about 6 months.
Mm-hmm. And I went to him and I told him, I'm not getting trained. Like, what do you want me to do here? And he had no idea. I hate to say this, but the man's oblivious to how his leadership team functions out there. So when I go tell him how his leadership team is functioning, they don't like that, because yep, that's a big part of the story. So when I told him what was going on and how the front assistant production manager was not training me, he called them into the office, and then I got a very long text message from that specific manager saying, we're going to invest in you.
So, yeah. So they text you this. They don't even pull you in for a one-on-one and give you, I mean, I'm sorry, that's a respectful thing to do. Pull you in, talk to you face to face. This is what we're going to do, but then send it in a follow-up email or text message. But you didn't even get that level of respect. You just got it in a text message and was just like, okay, we're going to invest in you.
Oh, I got not a text, a book sent to me of text messages on a Saturday at 5:30 in the morning, just blowing my phone up about how, one, I cater too much to the salespeople. Yes, it's still a production-based company. We had lost some of our biggest dealers because of our crappy quality. And I learned from that. I learned from other people's mistakes and also my own, which apparently that's how they train people there. You just got to screw the hell up and then grow from the bottom.
So there was no processes at all?
No. I learned what to look for, not by my assistant production managers whose role was to coach and mentor, but by teaming up with the salespeople who I would text and call whenever I pulled a house out. Can you please come walk this house with me? Now, granted, there were times they looked at me and said, what the hell did you just pull out? This looks terrible. Good. Tell me the bad.
Right.
I would write it down. I would take it back to my team. I would coach them. Then I learned what the service report is. And I started having them send it to me personally every week. And then I said, can you send me the year to date and also from the time I took over this department to today, so I can see if I'm making a difference, what I'm screwing up, and that can be my biggest focal point. And that's how I took one of the departments I was over from being number 1 in service to not even on the top 7. I had a goal in mind. Nobody else did that. Not one person. They never took the initiative. They were all there for the power and the money and to boss people around.
So, I mean, that just sounds, honestly, that sounds miserable. And I hate that experience happened to you. But it sounds like you did your due diligence, one, as an employee, but then 2, as a supervisor or manager, to make sure that you knew your role.
Mm-hmm.
And so you kind of created your own operational checklist, is what it sounds like. And then after you did that, you turned a department around, and then they turn around and humiliate you?
I was told by the inventory manager, and I forget what her actual role was, but she was in charge of like the finances there. I was told if I was ever moved out of that department that I made such a difference in, that I better be the person to train the new person in there. Because I had apparently brought so much to the company. I developed inventory checklists. Like, we had this worksheet that we had to turn in at least once a week. It was called a D&O. And I did one every day. Personally, if you have a lot of rework and your department is known for rework, you got a lot more than just a once a week thing. And if you are turning it in once a week, you're just pencil whipping. So I really narrowed it down on, where our quality issues were by focusing on the Gateway report, which apparently my team had never been shown, which I don't understand why. That's how you make a department better, by showing them what they, quote unquote, suck at, basically. And you help them grow. That's coaching and mentoring. It might not be pleasant, but when you do it in a respectful way and you follow it up with what they're doing right and tell them, this is just a little hiccup, but this is what you're doing great. We just need to fix this small portion right here. That's how you improve a department. So I made an inventory checklist, and it was every single material that I had to use. And I just did tally marks on how many times I had rework. And then I started putting the service report up on the board with how much we had improved based on the time when I took over the department versus the year-to-date stuff. And then I developed a training program for that department so that when people came in, they didn't just get one day of training and thrown to the wolves and left to die, which apparently that's what I went through.
Right.
I don't want anyone to go through that. So it was a step-by-step process so that they felt like I was investing in them and not just saying, go make me money. That's all they cared about. So there was a lot that I did for the company that everybody but my bosses raved about.
So your bosses did not acknowledge the work effort and operational checklists that you had created.
I was told I was too sensitive and too emotional to be a department manager because I did cry a lot. I'm not a crier. I'm really not. I'm a very strong person. But when you only point out the negative and you constantly say, if you're the leader that you claim to be, you should be able to handle this. Grow thicker skin.
Well, words are powerful.
Yeah.
Whether you're speaking to a male or a female, and you were in a male dominated industry and majority of your co-workers are male, correct? Or
yeah.
Male.
Now there are some DMs that are still there. I adore, I rave about. If it weren't for them, there was one specifically, and I told him this before I got terminated. I said, you're worth more than this role. Don't settle for this role, because he said, well, I'm just one of you guys. No, I've seen your potential. You're being held back.
But it sounds like they continued to degrade you and humiliate you through words because they knew that it hurt you, though. It's like they intentionally was doing it to hurt you. So they saw a value in you when they brought you in. But after you got there and you were performing and doing your duties and training yourself, essentially, then they were like, oh, well, you're too good and we don't want you to be as good as we are. So we're going to just start throwing darts at you to pop your balloons, to pop your bubble, to get you down on a level. I mean, you told me that they even told your department to intentionally slow down.
Yep. There were people that knew that this was happening that didn't report it until after they didn't work for the company anymore.
And then they told you to, these are your words, and quote, unquote, go compose yourself and get the fuck back to work.
Oh, yeah, that was a great experience. That day specifically, the plant had never pulled out 10 houses before in a day. I was over the department that helped make that happen. And I will never forget it because our GM and our safety manager and HR went to go get ice cream sandwiches. We were all excited about the whole thing. Behind the scenes, my dad was in the emergency room, and I still went to work that day. My brain was with my father, but, and I'm not going to cry, I still went in to be with my team. We pulled out 10 houses, and my assistant production manager pulled me to the side and completely slammed me. I don't remember what he said, but I remember we were still wearing face masks at that time from COVID. And I remember pulling my mask up to hide the tears. And I just stood there with my clipboard and I just blacked out. And then when he saw me crying, he looked at me and told me to go compose myself and then get the fuck back to work. Little did he know, one of my team members was in the house right next to us and overheard the whole thing. I had no idea. And when that specific team member came to me, he said, I have never in my life heard anyone talk to anyone the way that he just talked to you.
So there were witnesses.
Yes.
To this humiliation, to this, to them degrading you, to them, yes. Belittling you.
Some of them would laugh with them, and others would look at me and say, I feel so heartbroken. What he said, the team member told me, it broke my heart to hear him talking to you like that. And you know what? You took it and you went back to work.
Did any of these people that had witnessed this, did they stand up for you, like in this moment or after?
When they did stand up for me, they would get moved from my department.
Wow.
There was someone specifically to this day that finally had enough and called corporate. And I got retaliated against very hard because she spoke up on my behalf. And then...
So this was a female that spoke up on your behalf that was then moved and treated... Well, we don't know her whole story, but it sounds like when she said her piece, then she was transferred to another department. Okay.
That's just what they do. When one of the guys get complained about, they just transfer whoever it is complaining to another area.
So you even said where fellow colleagues were reporting it and they were like, oh, you're trying to go against us, get ready. And it sounds like, it sounds like the whole plant had their back against you.
That right there was 2 DMs specifically, the youngest ones actually. They were allowed to talk to us a certain way over the radio because they, quote unquote, found it motivating. It motivated them. So yeah, they were allowed to do that because they got the job done.
Well, let me ask this question. Was HR ever involved in any of this? Because if
the GM was involved.
The GM. So, because if somebody were to look at me, and I'm a huge fan of like David Goggins, and he talks shit to himself, and he's like, you're a fucking bitch, get back to work, go harder. Like, I talk to myself like that. But if somebody else were to come to me and talk to me like that, I think I would be like, hold the fuck up. Like,
I got it.
Hold on.
It was to where my department, they have to use air hoses. So if my guys did not unhook their hoses in the amount of time that those boys allotted for them to do it, they would raise our scaffolds up and just drag the hoses up with the scaffold and then say, if you guys don't start unplugging their hoses, we're going to start cutting them.
So that's like hazing. That's
harassment.
That's harassment.
So then finally they would unhook them and then drop them on my head. Yeah.
So they dropped these hoses on your head.
It got to the point where there was some employees, every time they walked by me, they didn't nudge me with their shoulder. They slammed their shoulders into me.
Male employees.
Yep.
Did you ever report any of this?
I did.
And nothing was done about it?
Nope.
Wow.
They're all still there, except for the assistant production manager is no longer there. One of the DMs got terminated, and the production manager, who I submitted all the text messages, because I got smart quick and started putting it all in writing. I submitted all the screenshots of me telling him what's going on. He got demoted, but they won't tell you it's for that. It's always some type of cover up.
Right.
But there are others that still are there that did this to me, and they're telling me, get over it.
Well, I know that, I'm not well versed in employment law, but I did work in staffing for quite some time. And so like when you're talking to employees or talking to people that you're recruiting, you tell them that North Carolina is an at-will state and a company can fire you for any reason. And all of these people were terminated essentially, but not for the reasons that that you're talking about now. So like I don't even know how I'm trying to ask this question because it is extremely complex to talk about. It's like North Carolina, although it's an at-will state, the things that people are truly doing is getting swept under the rug by branding their termination as something else.
Well, that's something that term actually is what my GM said, because when I tell you, I think he was just damn near oblivious as to how his plant's being ran. It was